Hello, BookTube. Just finished a novel, a contemporary novel, so I thought I'd give a response to it. It's cropped up quite a bit on BookTube, various people talking about it, recommending it. Savage Reads was one of them that I saw his review of it, so I bought the book, and it's one of probably the most contemporary novel I've read for a long time. Anyway, this is it. It is A Beast Slinks Towards Beijing by Alice Evelyn Yang. So it was published this year. And obviously, the title refers back to Yeats's poem Second Coming. A beast slinks towards Bethlehem to be born. This sort of a monstrous sphinx type image that he creates in the poem of Second Coming. It doesn't look like a very beneficent second coming that Yeats is talking about. But anyway, she is referring to that. And it's a kind of a nightmarish image. And the book opens a bit like that. The very first line. In August, Kianze's childhood nightmare returned with a vengeance. That's the first sentence, the first paragraph. 2017, Manhattan, New York. So it opens in with a Chinese settler in America in New York, and the first few chapters tell her experience. And what happens is she's doing some kind of dead end job, and suddenly a father who disappeared suddenly turns up in a bad state. After 11 years absence, he left her and her mother just disappeared without saying a word. On her birthday, actually, he disappeared there. So he comes back 11 years later, and he's in a strange state. He drinks all the time, smokes all the time, and she comments that he never used to smoke. And he seems to be in a state of total disarray and collapse. And he just turns up, and she's got this sort of cheap, small apartment, and he moves in, and she struggles with that, and so that he says there's a secret, a prophecy, but he can't remember what it was, but he needs to tell her. And in a way, that is eventually resolved right at the very end of the book. But there is a lot to do with nightmares and dreams and spirits and Chinese folklore. And although the first few chapters are to do with this Kenzie, they call her, she sort of anglicizes her name, but then it moves back to 1961, I think. And but it dates it all to the arrival of this father who's called Ba. He has other names. And so it begins to move through Chinese history, 20th century, early 20th century Chinese history, which has been very troubled, as I'm sure everybody knows, traumatic in some ways. And it's sort of telling that story, but it's more powerful than if you were to simply read a historical narrative about it. You know, the Japanese, the famines in China, the Japanese invasion, Manchu Kuo, and they created this kind of place called Manchu Kuo, ruled by the Japanese in the 1930s. And the brutality of that is known about, but this really goes into it. In fact, this book is a very harrowing account of Chinese history, the brutality, the cruelty, the barbarism of it. Um, it's at times brutal, shocking, and it's describing how various characters and families negotiate their way through it, or try to get through these, what they call, there's this saying, isn't there, about this Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. And these are very interesting times. And the cruelty, the suffering that goes on. What these spirits mean. They do mean something, and they're not just random. They are folkloric, I suppose. And if you know a bit about Chinese, I mean, obviously I'm not Chinese, and I don't have any Chinese connections whatsoever, but I know a little bit about it. I went to China in 1985, just when it was slightly opening up. But everybody wore the Mao suits and everything. It was very communist and difficult to travel. It was fascinating to see it. There was even in Beijing, there were no cars. Everybody rode about on bicycles. It was I mean, it's probably, I haven't been back since. It's probably completely different. One of the scenarios here is the 1960s with the Red Guards, which is awful. One of the characters, in fact, it's this. I better not give any spoilers, really, should I? No, I won't give spoilers. But one of the main characters becomes a Red Guard. And when I was there in 1985, nobody spoke English in China, but I did find occasionally school children, young people, did speak English because they were being taught it at school now. But not the older people didn't speak any English. You couldn't communicate with them unless you spoke Chinese, which I didn't. But I did meet a young man in his 30s in a cafe. He ran a cafe. He had hiring out motorbikes in Beijing, I think. Anyway, he told me he'd been a Red Guard, and he just said it's something you had to do. And this goes in, but they were brutal. It was it's horrifying. And what the character has to, people were encouraged. It's a bit like Berlin in the time of Hitler. Really, people were encouraged to denounce one another, or in East Berlin and so on. So one of the characters denounces his grandmother to save his immediate family. And of course, he's traumatized by this. That's partly what it is about these ghosts appearing all the time, these spirits. When I went to China, China had become, now emphasized material prosperity, material progress. He tried to eradicate religion and superstition and all this kind of thing. But I did notice when I went there that there were images of Guanyin everywhere. Guanyin is very important to the Chinese, and Guanyin gets mentioned a lot in the book, but it doesn't explain who Guanyin is. Guanyin is Bodhisattva. It's a Buddhist expression of compassion, and it's usually shown as a female. It looks like the Madonna in Christianity, and you would see these in windows all over. I was really surprised to see that, but that the in the book, the characters, when they're desperate, are often asking for Guanyin's help. Guanyin comes in various forms to help humanity. Here's Guanyin, hears the cries of the world. So it says. One of the there's this kind of fox spirit that keeps cropping up as well, And again, I'm reminded of the Wu Men Quan, which has a story in there. The Wu Men Quan was written down in 1228, but it's talking about older traditions. So these folk stories and superstitions go back a long, long way. And Alice Evelyn Yang is obviously showing that they have not disappeared, that people still follow this. There's quite a bit about folk medicine and so on as well. But the fox spirit occurs in this story called Hyakujo's Fox, where there's a monastery out in the mountains, and the abbot of the monastery gives a talk every day. And right at the end of the talk, this one old man remains behind. And the abbot knows that he's not one of the monks. He's not one of he shouldn't be there, really. Eventually he comes and asks him who he is. The old man says, I'm not a human being. I'm a ghost. I'm a spirit. I've been condemned to live 500 lives as a fox because I made a mistake when somebody asked me a question. That's the story. And it says, so the abbot, of course, says, what was the question? And the man says, well, I was the abbot here before you. And a monk asked me, is the enlightened man free from cause and effect or not? And I said, he is free. And this is the standard, the enlightened one, the Buddha, if you like, or whatever, is free from cause and effect. But for that reason, I fell under this spell to live my 500 lives as a fox. Can you free me from this? And the abbot says, well, ask me the question. And he says, well, is the enlightened person free from cause and effect or not? And the abbot says, the enlightened one is at one with cause and effect, neither free nor trapped by it. He says, thank you. Now, the abbot says, we'll go and find this. Says to all the monks, I want you to prepare a funeral for a dead monk. And they're all wondering, well, nobody's died. And they go out into the mountain and find this body of this dead fox and have this cremation ritual for it. The monks don't know what's going on. It tells a story. The monks don't understand. And then right at the end of the story in the Wu Men Quan, it says, but don't forget that he enjoyed every one of his 500 lives as a fox. So that puzzle is left right at the very end. So these spirits and these demons, some of them are demonic in this, especially there's one demonic figure of a Japanese soldier. And these spirits, what do they represent? She doesn't tell us directly, but they do represent something, and they have power. And they're weaving their way through because of all the suffering, I think, because of all the brutality. These spirits are abound all over the place. They're not limited to China. But people don't understand them until they understand their past, and until they understand their history, until they understand what brought them where they are. That's partly it. Can say what brought her where she is, and more important still, what brought her father there. Why is he suffering so much? What's wrong? He was an educated man, and now he's just an alcoholic. But as towards the end of the book, there's not a lot of cheer in the novel, but towards the end, things are resolved. There is some resolution, and the old man ends up satisfied, I think. So does Kianse. Many people, many of the characters don't survive. They don't make it. So there's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of utter cruelty. And it's got the ring of authenticity about it, I think. It's telling the truth about some of this, what human beings can be like, humans as demons. And it's a harrowing read, but you feel moved by it, and it is, I think it's unforgettable, really. So if you're wanting a powerful novel that you won't forget in a hurry, then Beast Slinks Towards Beijing by Alice Evelyn Yang. Thank you.